What's up, guys? I'm Anime Yokage, and today we're diving into One Piece Chapter 1103, titled I'm Sorry, Dad. This chapter, we're getting out of Kuma's flashback after seeing all of his pain and anguish and suffering, and back into the main story. In fact, I think the only part that we got to see of Kuma's life that wasn't absolutely horrible and bad was whenever he was just hanging out with Ginny in Sorbet Kingdom for a little while. And we all know that Oda is a sucker for a devastating, life-altering, sad backstory. But damn, dude. If you didn't know any better, you'd say that Oda hated Kuma. To be able to think of things this dark is actually impressive on Oda's part, that they're all just up here in his brain. I feel bad for him.
Come on, man.
We are back on Egghead Island with Saturn holding Bonney up in the air, crushing her. With Bonney in despair, he lets her know that Kuma, her father, is in fact dead. And Luffy's over in the corner calling out for food, because we all know that if Luffy gets food, Luffy gets back in the fight. Everyone around Luffy states they can't move at all, I guess because of Saturn's power holding them in place. I don't know if it's out of fear or actual power, but none of them can move to get Luffy some food. And it's at that moment we see Kizaru wake back up, kind of in a daze, but the first things that he says are Sentomaru and Bonney. It's kind of crazy because the first things that he says are the things that have a deeper emotional meaning to him, and not just him being a dog of the government or wondering what's going on. He immediately sees both of them captured and in danger, and that's his first priority on his mind. And just a few panels over, we get some kind of flashover to Dragon Ivankov talking about the instinct fragment. They go on to speculate that it's probably at Marijois, and Dragon only says that Kuma was wrong. I'm thinking Kuma had something else in mind. Earlier in the chapter, we saw that Vegapunk gave Bonney some kind of pendant, and he said it was a protection charm from Kuma. He was supposed to give it to Bonney for her 10th birthday, and it's actually a sapphire in the shape of the sun. Now, given Kuma's belief in the sun god Nika and how he's going to liberate and free everybody, we could probably take that at face value, saying that the sun represents protection, and also a symbol of what Bonney couldn't go into whenever she had the sapphire scales sickness. But I think that that's the instinct fragment they're talking about. And you'll see why I think that in a few panels. Because I think that that protection charm is supposed to be a beacon for Kuma to find. In case Bonney were to ever be in trouble, he'd be able to find out where she is immediately. And Dragon saw Kuma fly off toward Marijois, which is why he stated that he's probably wrong. But I think that he went to Marijois for a different reason, and I'll explain here in a little bit. But then the chapter goes on to reveal that Saturn actually did experiments on Bonney when she was still a child. And that's why Bonney has her powers, not because she ate a devil fruit. And that's absolutely wild, because we've seen Vegapunk actually clone a devil fruit and give the powers to somebody else, but they had to eat the devil fruit whenever Momonosuke ate Kaido's dragon fruit. But we're still not sure of how devil fruits are imbued into objects, such as swords or other weapons, or even an island that we think Zunisha might be. Apparently, to give Bonney the powers, instead of eating the devil fruit, they actually injected her with the extract of the fruit. While she was still a child, of course. And apparently the wielder of these fruit-like powers that we thought were the product of the age fruit are actually able to transform their body however they see fit regarding this foreseeable future. The catch, though, is that the powers are severely decreased when one's knowledge of the future differs from reality. Now, this is kind of hard to interpret given that no one knows the foreseeable future. Or maybe because she can see their timeline and the varying futures of that timeline, it decreases her power how far she varies or branches off from that foreseeable future she can already see from her powers. I'm not entirely sure, but we get basically no information on this, so I hope we find out more in the future about how this works. Saturn also says something weird about the white form of Nika not internally connecting to Bonney yet.
I said to myself, what the hell happened to her?
It's kind of weird for Saturn to mention this, like they weren't trying to create an age fruit, but rather they were trying to create a knockoff version of the Nika fruit, while of course not having the Nika fruit in hand. So instead they got this great value version. Then, without surprise, Bonney starts losing the fight, which makes sense because she's like 12 years old and he's a whole ass Gorosei with like death stare, cocky, immediate regeneration, and a mythical zone to top it all off.
Reaper's finally calling my name.
Honestly, if Saturn wasn't taking pity on her for being a celestial dragon and a literal child, this fight would have been over a long time ago, and he wouldn't be holding her in the air for like 2 chapters. If you're counting the flashbacks, even more than 2 chapters. We then see that Bonney is being completely defeated by Saturn. Actually, all of her powers are being weakened, I guess by his haki or his stare. I'm still not sure if that has something to do with his devil fruit ability, or just his hockey in general. But Luffy finds himself a buffet out of literally nowhere. Seriously, no one knows who brought the food, but it's just there now. And Luffy is eating it all at super speed. Now, who would be the only person who isn't affected by Saturn's stare, still retaining his abilities, and then also is able to move fast enough to get Luffy the food and make it look like nothing happened? Almost seems like you have to move at the speed of light to do something like that. I think it's Kizaru, who can't raise a hand against Saturn because he cares about Bonney and Saturn, but nothing says that he can't help someone else out who can fight Saturn, while moving so fast that he isn't the one being seen helping said person.
I am very, very sneaky, sir.
It's absolutely no secret that there's a lot of people in the community that suspected that Kizaru would actually help out the Straw Hats in some way or form when it came to this arc. Given his deep connections to Sentomaru and Bonney and Vegapunk and Kuma even, he knows deep down in his heart that none of these people that were involved deserve what's happening right now or deserve what happened to them in the past. Again, it's just a theory, so we're going to wait and see. Since Bonney is losing and literally getting crushed to death, you can bet your ass that Kuma is going to show up on the scene. Since her stepdad literally has the power to teleport anywhere he wants, it's not crazy to think that he would show up at a moment's notice. And we all knew he was coming there. It wasn't a crazy thought. Either way, he's ready to throw hands. Or pause, whichever one sounds better. Now we see the entirety of the Marines completely freaking out that Kuma has showed up on the scene. They pick up every gun they have and just start completely unloading on him. And you may think like me that Kuma could just block all these shots, all this cannon fire, everything like that. But he's so tunnel vision right now in this moment that he doesn't care about everything hitting him. He's making a straight beeline at Saturn and Bonney. And I thought this was weird seeing this, but Vegapunk actually says something about Kuma, why is he here? I thought for sure that Kuma was the person that Vegapunk signaled or called, that mystery person that we never found out about a long time ago. I thought it would for sure be Kuma, but apparently there's still a mystery person ready in the wings to help the Straw Hats. At this point, I have no idea who that could be. But once he breaks through the forces and reaches Bonney and Saturn, Saturn clenches Bonney yet again, throws her to the ground, and picks up his spider foot spike thing and gets ready to stab at her. Kuma ain't gonna let that slide though. Kuma jumps in between them and takes the stab for Bonney, saving her. He then turns around, grabs the spike, and when I tell you that Kuma is mad, we have never, ever seen this kind of rage from the pacifist. I'm talking grit his teeth, internally screaming rage mad. I don't even think we've ever seen Kuma strike with a closed fist, and he's got one brewing in this panel. While he's rearing back, getting ready to strike, we can see some kind of aura emitting from his fist. I'm not sure if that has to do with his pawpaw fruit, hockey, or even just added into the panel to make it more dramatic and crazy. Kind of like whenever Luffy punched that celestial dragon at Marijois. He didn't use anything wild, it was just a heavy-ass punch. Now, what we saw in the flashback, Kuma is all too familiar with Saturn. He saw him at the beginning of his suffering, and he's seeing him now towards the end of his suffering. Now, I saw this theory that I absolutely love, and I hope comes true. If you can remember back in the series, what was one of Kuma's most devastating attacks?
Shock.
No, not that one. Remember when nothing happened? We saw back in Thriller Bark when Zoro tanked all of Luffy's pain from that fight, and we're pretty sure it's just the pain from the fight. I'm not sure if it's any prior injuries that came with it, but we saw Zoro tank it all. But he barely tanked it all, because let's be real. Anytime there's a 3-meter wide radius of blood around someone, it isn't like nothing happened. Someone has taken some major damage. And we now know from the flashback that Kuma has been kind of watching Luffy after finding out that Luffy was Dragon's son this entire journey. And this is why Kuma took such a strong interest in Luffy. And if you're going to take a strong interest in Luffy, you got to take a strong interest in his crew too. And that's what Kuma wanted to do in this test against Zoro. He wanted to vet him and make sure that he was the proper right-hand man for the future king of the pirates, or the man that would change the world. So when Zoro took all of Luffy's pain in, imagine someone accumulating pain and damage over a couple hour-long fight, but then that all being condensed in just a couple moments of you feeling all that pain, Stamina loss, damage, everything just within a few acute moments. You're going to feel that way more than extended out over a long period of time. So here's where the theory comes in. I think that Kuma actually took off to the red line in order to start accumulating damage and pain, taking on the Marines head on, taking on a Kainu head on, and getting half his head blown off in the process. Taking all that accumulated pain and damage and then flying over to Egghead to use all that damage when it matters most. And what poetic justice than accumulating all that damage to save his daughter and inflict it on the person who caused them all their pain and suffering throughout their entire lives. Both of them. Not only did we see in Kuma's flashback that Saturn put all these things in motion to ruin Kuma's life, but to top it all off, he's the one that injected and experimented with Sapphire's scales, putting it in Ginny, which then got passed down to Bonney even. Saturn has been solely responsible for almost all the pain and anguish in Kuma's life. And now, Kuma would just be simply handing back all that pain and suffering to the person who started it all and began the infliction. And this would give Saturn a taste of only one person that he's caused anguish and pain throughout their entire life, much less the entire world that he has shackled and destroyed along his path. I would absolutely love if this is how Kuma attacks Saturn, but I guess we'll find out coming up soon. I know that if that doesn't happen, Oda will just have something better in mind. He's never let me down yet. So thank you guys for hopping on and tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the chapter, and also be ready for more videos coming out from me soon. I have so much on the plate that I want to cover, but with me just learning how to do this, it's going to take me a little bit, so please be patient with me. Thanks a lot, you guys, and tune in next time.